Today, I am going to teach Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and one of the very important question which is supposed to be asked so many times, and that is appropriateness of Pride and Prejudice as the title of Jane Austen's novel. So listen it carefully because so much of content which you will be listening can be utilized in many more questions. Now, Pride and Prejudice was originally entitled, ये लिख दीजिएगा, इससे बहुत अच्छा इंप्रेशन पड़ेगा. Pride and Prejudice was originally entitled First Impressions. First Impressions, ये पहला उसका नाम था. It was entitled First Impressions, and when the novel was revised and recast, it was given the title now bears. The present title is so appropriate that it hardly needs any defense, it hardly needs any justification, and all that one can do is to explain its significance. Jane Austen is not a psychological novelist. हर फोटे, उसका फोटे क्या है, उनका फोटे क्या है, हर फोटे is the delineation of social manners. But by giving her novel this title, Pride and Prejudice, she does indicate her interest in the delicate psychological study of the interaction of the human emotions like pride, like prejudice. So this should be the first para of your question, of your answer rather, if such question comes. And at a very superficial level, Darcy embodies pride. On his very first appearance in the novel, he is declared to be, quote unquote, लिखिएगा जरूर, the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world. और विकम कहता है, विकम, WICKHAM, Wickham tells Elizabeth that almost all of Darcy's actions may be traced to pride, but he analyzes it as filial pride, his pride in his father, now dead, and as brotherly pride, his pride in his sister Georgina. और थोड़ा सा आयरॉनिक टोन में, in a very ironic tone, Wickham adds that this pride has often been his best friend. Now, according to Darcy himself, his pride consisted in being selfish. Not only selfish, but overbearing. I don't know whether you have read the original novel. In chapter 48, I should not be wrong rather, in chapter 48, looking retrospectively over his past behavior, he tells Elizabeth that he was taught good principles, but was left to follow them in pride and conceit. His parents had allowed him, almost encouraged him to be selfish and overbearing, to care for none beyond his own family circle, to think meanly of all the rest of the world, to wish at least to think meanly of their sense and worth compared to his own. Then you can also see in chapter 34, when he makes his first proposal to Elizabeth, he is as eloquent on the subject of tenderness as of pride. His pride pre, uh, precludes his judgment. He remains blind to the faults of Lady Catherine and Miss Bingley, and is prepared to think meanly on those beneath him in social standing till he is made to recognize his moral blindness by Elizabeth. Now, Darcy's pride piques Elizabeth, piques का spelling है Piqueus. Darcy's pride piques Elizabeth when he turns down a suggestion by Bingley to dance with Elizabeth with a very humiliating remark. And what was that humiliating remark? Quote unquote, she is not handsome enough to tempt me. She instantaneously gets prejudiced against him, and as her remarks to Charlotte reveal, she resolves to hate him. Darcy's confession of his implacability at Netherfield, कोर्ट में कहता है, I cannot forget the follies and the vices of others so soon as I ought, nor their offenses against myself. My good opinion once lost is lost forever. ये सेंटेंस, ये जो पूरा सेंटेंस है, this dialogue basically deepens her prejudice, and she now begins willfully to misinterpret all his utterances, all his actions. If Darcy's pride clouds his judgment, Elizabeth's prejudice clouds her. Usually percipient, she fails to detect the impropriety of Wickham's slanderous statements about Darcy and the incongruities inherent, latent in them, and willingly allows herself to be imposed upon. So complete is her trust in Wickham that she readily declares Darcy to be abominable. And the process of self-discovery starts at Rosings. Darcy, embarrassed by the vulgarity of his auntie, Lady Catherine, acquires a new vision of life, and his complacent belief in the refinement of his own circle has already received a dent from Caroline Bingley's hypocrisy and even selfishness. Lady Catherine's ill-breeding makes him realize that refinement of manners is no monopoly of the elite, nor their depravity the bane of the low. His rejection at the hands of Elizabeth proves to him the futility of the acquirements he had been priding in. There must be something seriously wrong with his values if they could not prove etiquette enough to please a woman worthy of being pleased. He was proud in the beginning, but he is completely humbled. In Colonel Fitzwilliam, Elizabeth gets a new standard of assessing the gentility of Wickham, but she hardly benefits from it. Her moment of self-awakening comes on receipt of Darcy's letter and her gradual recognition of the validity of his objections to the Jane Bingley marriage. She is now ashamed to think how she has been blind, partial, prejudiced, absurd. She had prided herself on her discernment and disdained the generous candor of Jane, whereas she has all long been blind. She is now prepared to revise her opinion. Mrs. Reynolds' testimony softens her further, but the role played by Darcy in bringing about Lydia's marriage with Wickham just overwhelms her. And Darcy's role in the Lydia Wickham episode proves that he has completely shed his pride, or else he would not have assented to get involved in the Bennet's disgrace and have for his brother-in-law the man he most despises. Elizabeth's recognition that Darcy was exactly the man who, in disposition and talents, would most suit her, suggests that her initial prejudice against him is over and time is now ripe for them to get married. However, it would be an oversimplification of the novel to assume that Pride and Prejudice refer exclusively to Darcy and Elizabeth. The fact is that both Darcy and Elizabeth are proud as well as prejudiced. Darcy is proud of his social superiority, Darcy is proud of his refinement, and it is this pride of his that leads him to a general prejudice against the rural gentry much beneath him in social hierarchy. Elizabeth is proud of her perception, her superior personality, the sharpness of her intellect, and her prejudice against Darcy stems from her sense of hurt pride. और वो कहती है, एलिजाबेथ कहती है कोट अनकोट में, I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine. और वो चैप्टर 36 में अगर आप देखें जहाँ पे she reflects over the contents of Darcy's letter, she again refers to her vanity. And in the proposal scene, Darcy accuses Elizabeth of pride when Elizabeth accuses him of prejudice. She tells him that he has been prejudiced against Wickham, against Jane, and in general against anything that does not fit into his social world. In turn, Darcy tells her that she would not have been so adamant had not your pride been hurt by my honest confession. And this ironic reversal also points to the fact that both of them are guilty of both pride and prejudice. So ये आपका जो टाइटल है, ये आपका जो क्वेश्चन है,